welcome to South First, where we narrate the other half of India's story. I am Chetana Belagere. COVID-19 situation in China and few other countries has led the Indian government to up its antenna. Several measures are being put in place. Of all the measures, the most important being testing of international travelers at airport and sending positive samples for genome sequencing. Now, after 3 years into the pandemic, we all know that tracking the COVID-19 virus continues to be important, and genome sequencing is one of the most important methods that the organizations have always relied upon. Today, to discuss on its importance, what are we really trying to find with genome sequencing, and what is the data from India telling us, we have with us Dr. Chitra Pattabiraman, Chief Scientific Officer, Infectious Disease Research Foundation, who works on emerging viruses in human populations, how they mutate, diversify, and how this impacts their ability to cause disease. Her long-term research interest has been to identify circulating and emerging pathogens. Dr. Chitra, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks, Chetana.
So, Dr. Chitra, just to quickly tell us what exactly is genome sequencing, if you could explain this to a layman.
Hi, so yeah, I know that you like my beads on a string way of talking about genome sequencing. So I've got some beads here. So if you can think about DNA or any kind of genomic material as beads on a string, they are made up of 4 beads. Okay, you can think of them as being made up of 4 colored beads. And you can think of the SARS-CoV-2 genome as being a long string with around 30,000 beads. Okay, so you can see here there is a pink followed by a green and then another green and then blue, right? So this is what is a sequence. And when we are doing the genomic sequencing, we are trying to identify what are those 4 chemicals, what is their arrangement, okay? Now, when something changes, right, when a virus mutates, what happens is you get a different sequence from what you had before. So you can see here, so this sequence, they are very closely related to each other. But if you look, it starts with a pink, 2 greens followed by blues. In the next one, there are 2 greens and a pink and 2 whites, right? So this kind of change will result in the change in the virus itself.
Okay.
It can result in a change in the virus itself, and what we are tracking is those kind of changes. This could result in higher transmission, or it could result in greater severity of disease, or it could cause no change at all. That can also happen. So this is what we are doing when we are doing genomic sequencing.
Okay, that is really simple way of explaining. I think it's very clear now what we are trying to find. So now, we know that the number of testing has been kind of low in the past few months because COVID itself, the disease, despite, the number of cases itself was low for you all to do the genome sequencing. Now, in such scenarios, is there a threat that there would be a new variant which has already come into the country and we have not been able to find it? Is that possible?
So actually the baseline surveillance, genomic surveillance in the country has been going on since there have been multiple consortiums and multiple groups trying to do that. So I think in the last 3 years, there's been a lot of improvement in trying to do the baseline surveillance. So because of that, I think we are in a position to have a better idea of what is circulating. And it's more important to track variants when the cases are increasing. Okay. But you also need to have continuous surveillance. I think we are in a position to identify things by tracking them over time.
Okay, that's some good news that, we are there on the track now. So now if we could analyze some of the data, which is because the fear is that there is XBB variant, then there is BF.7, and that is going to cause, because these are some of the variants which is circulating in China. And we know that the situation is very different from what has happened in China and what has happened in India. That is very clear now. So now with the available data that we have now, can we just explain to our viewers on the dominant variant here in India?
So in India, we know that we saw a huge Omicron wave around January, right? Early part of 2022. Post that, we have only had Omicron in the country. So this is from publicly available sequencing data that has been posted. And you can see that it's mostly all Omicron. No other viral lineages are there. And within Omicron, there are many sublineages. So all this XBB, BF, all of BF.7, all of them are sublineages of Omicron. And tracking studies across the world have not found them to have increased severity in disease. In India, BF.7 was actually found in the middle of the year, but it never took off. We never got an increasing trend for that particular variant. XBB is the dominant variant in India, but it has been the dominant variant for quite a few months now.
Okay.
So it's not a new variant.
Okay, you're saying that it is not a new variant as such, and we've now that you said that in India, you're saying XBB has been the dominant sublineage of Omicron, which is the dominant one. So now, when we look at South India, is there any change, or is it the same, or have there been? So, how many sublineages of Omicron do we approximately have seen in the last few months?
Right, there are too many,
Okay.
and there are very small differences. But the major sublineage seems to be XBB. That is the one, and sublineages of XBB itself are also being seen in Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, all of these places. So there is XBB.3, for instance. But all of them are within the Omicron lineage, like we said, and also XBB seems to be dominant across. But we also need to do more sequencing. We need to sequence from hospitals. So there are other things that we need to do, but this is what the trend is looking like overall.
So this, is it something, I mean, there was a kind, I mean, when we were discussing earlier, before we recorded this show, you were telling me that, there was a slight mild high, spike kind of thing when we found some variants. So could you explain to me on that?
No, so basically what we have been doing is also doing environmental surveillance in parallel. Right. Okay. So because the cases and the active circulation of virus in the population has been lower, one way to detect the virus is to do environmental surveillance. So multiple groups have been doing environmental surveillance, and we have also been doing, as part of Infectious Disease Research Foundation, we have been doing local, like hyper-local environmental surveillance, and we have seen that in the last 5-6 weeks, we haven't detected circulating virus. But before that, in November, July, August, September, we had detected the virus, and that correlated with the detection of XBB.
So you are saying there was a mild spike kind of thing, and then it died down. Can we say that, or how would you want to tell that?
It looks like that from the data that we have, that that there were small spikes much lower than the initial Omicron. That makes sense because our immune landscape, as you know, we have all got, almost all of us have got 2 doses plus booster, and then we've probably had infections as well. So the immune landscape is set up in a way that for Omicron itself, we don't expect to see major increase.
Okay, so is there any now that most of the experts I have spoken to have spoken about the situation in China and the possibility of mutation of the virus and that leading to a new variant to occur. So is there any is there anything specific which through genome sequencing which we could try to find? Is there anything of that sort happening?
So right now, as long as there is a lot of circulating virus in the population, or there are people in whom the virus persists for a long time, or there are animal hosts, there's always a chance that the virus will change into a slightly different form. Okay. And because of that, we need to continue monitoring. That is very important. Now, one way to do that when we don't have that much circulating virus is to monitor international travelers or to monitor imported positives, if we can find them, to continue doing that, to have a sense of what is circulating globally, what is spreading globally, because that is our experience from the past 2-3 years, that variants of concern particularly can spread quite fast. So we can detect them if we focus on travel hubs.
Okay, so now we have had you spoke about XBB. Now there is a threat of, many ministers are talking about, okay, BF.7, this particular person traveling from China has BF.7. So we had BF.7 in June itself, right? I mean, is that also
in
something?
India, it was detected in around July, I think.
July,
that's, yeah. And, but it did not take off in the background of what we had circulating at that time. The other viruses that were circulating seem to have done better than BF.7. Based on the evidence we have right now, we don't think that is going to take over or track with severity, but that's something we need to watch out for. Like all over the world right now, we are watching for increase in hospitalizations correlating with changes in the virus. See, one way to think about it is that the virus changes. Think about, can I give you an example of what that is?
Yes,
like?
Yes.
Yeah, so basically think of it as like somebody moving from one locality to another locality in the city, and you're trying to track them. So with their rough address, if they're moving close by, you can track them easily. So the immune system can find that. So think of a postman trying to deliver a letter. If you're moving close by, they may be able to find you. But suppose you move to a different city or a completely different locality, then you can't be located as easily. So when the genomic changes are large, or the change in the virus is so much that your immune system no longer recognizes, that is when you have this chance of immune escape. And also the property of the virus can change and it can give rise to more severe disease. So these are the two things that right now would be important to track. But BF.7 itself doesn't seem to be a major concern given what we have seen in the past.
Okay. So what are the other modes of, you spoke of environmental surveillance. So if we can just briefly explain on what are the other modes of surveillance that you are doing?
So right now we are focusing on wastewater surveillance in a sort of hyper local way. So we are going into we are looking at apartment complexes, institutions, hospitals, and the airport, and we are looking at the wastewater and seeing if there is a virus that has been we can only detect nucleic acid from the virus, that is a genetic material, not the virus itself. So that we are trying to see whether it's there, so that we don't have to check people. We can look at this to get an estimate of how much virus there is.
So what has the situation been in the last?
As of now, at least from our surveillance efforts, which have been continuing from June, we have tested more than 600 samples, and it looks like in the last 5-6 weeks, we haven't found circulating virus, but other groups are also doing this and they have detected traces of virus. So we need to be careful and we need to continue surveillance. So surveillance is something that should happen in a continuous way, right? And genomic surveillance also. This is something, if we do it continuously, then we are more prepared. So I think that's what all the efforts are right now.
Okay. So do we still need that 5% of the samples to be tested? I mean, there was this whole thing about, you need to at least have a minimum of so many samples to do the surveillance, especially the genome sequencing surveillance. So is that going to be difficult now?
I mean, I think that whenever you see positive cases, particularly in hospitals, it is important to sequence them. If it is in clusters, if it is international travelers, it is important to sequence because all of them give us an idea of what is happening. And some of them can give us an idea before something like an outbreak happens. So they are important signals that we are looking at, and we have got better at looking at these signals in the last 3 years.
So, Dr. Chitra, we have, I know that you have been tracking the variants very closely in Karnataka, especially. So, which are some of the variants we have actually seen here in Karnataka, South India, in Karnataka?
Hi, so this is based again on publicly available data. So, whatever is on GISAID and done by multiple groups. And what we have found is that, what they have found is that in the beginning, that is early 2022, we started with the Omicron wave, which was mostly BA.1 and BA.2. Followed by that, sort of mid of 2022, we had mostly dominated by BA.2.75. In between, we've had lots of sublineages of Omicron as well. And at that time, we also had BA.4 and BA.5, some of that, followed by XBB. These are our major variants. Roughly, this is the profile.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Chitra. It was wonderful. And I think you've explained it like really in layman's terms so that we can totally understand and relate to it. Is there anything else which you want to add to this?
No, thank you. Thanks. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about this.
Thank you, Dr. Chitra. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks.
That is all we have for now. Thank you for watching.